Okay, so in the birth story world, the epidural is very controversial, and there's a lot of really strong opinions on both sides. So I wanted to share my experience because I had an epidural with my first and not with my second. My birth experiences were night and day. My first was an emergency induction, and it was 25 hours of labor that included 3.5 hours of pushing. I got the epidural 14 hours in, and I was doing fine without it, to be honest. I was kind of bullied into the epidural. I really didn't want it. But I had an allergic reaction to the Cervidil that caused a burning sensation in my vagina, and they told me it was going to get worse, and that the only thing to fix that was the epidural. I actually cried as they put it in, sobbing to my mom, "Please don't tell anyone that I did this." I was really embarrassed. I really was bullied into it. Now, I'm not saying that anyone who gets the epidural should feel embarrassed or ashamed. That was just how I felt in the moment. The epidural comes with many risks, and I think it's important to research what those are before you make that decision. Now, the epidural was painful getting it in, to be honest. It was not fun. You do have to get a catheter. Typically, I've heard that people haven't, but my hospital's policy was that if you get the epidural, you have to have a catheter, and that was the worst part of it. It does completely knock out the pain, but it also knocks out every other sensation. And there's some really beautiful feelings in birth, and to enable to birth your baby yourself, you have to be able to feel where the baby is, and you can't feel that with the epidural. I thought I did, but when I had a natural birth, I realized that I couldn't feel anything. Pushing was really difficult. They had to tell me when to push, and I ended up tearing so badly that I got 14 stitches inside of me, and my baby was only 6 pounds 9 ounces. And I pushed for 3.5 hours because they told me that he was stuck, but I think a big problem was I couldn't feel where he was. And you should never force pushing unless you feel like you need to. Your body tells you when to do that. So I didn't have any lasting effects with the epidural, but I've had many friends have permanent migraines after that. So I don't recommend the epidural. If you get one, then that's your choice. But I think you should do what makes you happy, and you should enjoy your birth experience and have no regrets. That is one of my bigger regrets with my son, was that I got the epidural. Now, with my natural labor, I had predominant labor for 6 weeks, and then I was in labor for 11 hours the night before I had him. Then my labor stopped for many hours, so the actual labor that gave me him was from first contraction to when he was in my arms was only 2 hours. So very different experience than the 25 hours before with my first baby. So those 2 hours were the most intense hours. I had 2 contractions, and then I went into transition, and I was in transition, until I had him. And my transition was incredibly painful. I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I punched my window. I was in a lot of pain. I wanted to die, and I told myself I would never do this naturally again. I looked at my best friend who was pregnant when she was in the room with me, and she was pregnant, and I looked at her and I said, "Don't do this to yourself, get the epidural." Then I went to push him, and my body pushed himself out, and I didn't do anything. He just came out in 2 big pushes, and it was not painful pushing him out whatsoever. He was 2 pounds bigger than my first. He was 8'4". I didn't have any tearing. I didn't have any postpartum pain whatsoever. I pushed him out, and then I looked over at my best friend and said, "You have to do this natural." It was the most amazing, best feeling. Those 2 hours of labor, it sucked. It was painful, but the feeling of giving birth naturally completely overshadows the labor pain. I recommend going natural to anyone. The feeling of pushing your baby out naturally, it's indescribable, and it was so beautiful that I have absolutely no regrets with that. Um, Afterwards, I, like I said, I was not in pain. That I had him at home the second time, and I just laid in bed and we watched movies and ate snacks, and I was awake and I felt great. And they had to keep me down because I was ready to get up and clean my house and wear my baby and enjoy being a mom. I felt amazing. I did not have any tears. My bleeding was minimal. No hemorrhoids. No. Um, I had a little bit of tenderness, when I would sit, but that's normal. You just pushed a baby out. But it was nothing compared to my first. My first, I couldn't walk for 2 weeks. I was in so much pain for a very long time. And I really do believe the epidural had a lot to do with that. The epidural blocks um, the parts in your brain that tell you how to birth your baby. I truly believe that. I believe that the oxytocin and everything is a lot less with the epidural. I just, you know, I think you should just remember that your body is made to birth a baby, and yes, it is painful, but it is the most beautiful, amazing experience, and I don't know anyone who regrets giving birth naturally. So that's my experience, and I hope that you consider and research natural birth. I have friends who are doing hypnobirthing, and they swear by the hypnosis. That was not something that I did or researched, but if that's something that you're interested in, hypno babies, there's books, there's CDs, there's movies, whatever you need. YouTube it. There's lots of pain management things to get you through labor. Mine happened so quickly I wasn't really able to utilize them in the actual labor, but in my labor for 11 hours before, oils and hip squeezes got me through. So, and actually made it a very peaceful labor. So, I definitely recommend researching pain management and, shooting for a natural birth if that's what you want. So, that is my experience. And if you have any questions or comments, comment below. And don't forget to subscribe.